Hi, this is Monique again. I serve as one of the spokespersons for Nehemiah Reset. Today I wanted to delve into the meteoric rise of Ilhan Omar's net worth in recent years. Ilhan Omar's journey from a Somali refugee to one of America's most prominent progressive politicians has been nothing short of remarkable. However, in recent years, it is not just her political career that has captured public attention but the extraordinary growth in her personal wealth. Reports suggest that Omar's net worth has skyrocketed from approximately $65,000 to as much as $30 million in just a few short years since joining Congress. This financial transformation raises important questions about the sources of her wealth, the transparency of her financial disclosures, and potential connections to ongoing fraud investigations in Minnesota. This comprehensive analysis will examine Omar's financial trajectory in detail, exploring her documented financial disclosures, the mechanisms through which her wealth appears to have grown, and the various controversies surrounding her financial dealings. We will also investigate connections between Omar and individuals involved in fraud schemes, particularly the massive Feeding Our Future fraud case that has rocked Minnesota's political and charitable landscape. Ilhan Omar's financial situation upon entering Congress painted a picture of relative modesty. According to her 2020 financial disclosure, she reported a single asset, a retirement account valued between $1,001 and $15,000. At the same time, she listed one liability, student loan debt incurred in October 2005, estimated between $15,001 and $50,000. This disclosure suggests a net worth that was potentially negative or at best barely positive in 2020. This financial profile was consistent with Omar's background as a former refugee who had worked as a community nutrition educator and policy aide before entering politics. Her early career in Minnesota's progressive political circles would not typically lead to substantial wealth accumulation, making her subsequent financial transformation all the more striking. The most dramatic shift in Omar's reported financial status appears to have occurred between 2020 and 2024. According to her 2024 financial filing, Omar and her husband, Tim Minott, reported a household net worth between $6 million and $30 million at the end of 2024. This represents an increase of at least 600-fold from her 2020 disclosure, even using the most conservative estimates. The primary driver of this wealth explosion appears to be Minott's business interests. According to available information, Minott and Omar's wealth derives almost entirely from his ownership stake in two business entities. Unfortunately, the search results do not provide complete details about these business interests, but the scale of the reported wealth suggests substantial holdings. Further insight comes from Quiver's congressional net worth tracking software, which parsed Omar's new annual financial disclosure. Among the holdings disclosed were up to $25 million in Rose Lake Capital LLC. This single investment accounts for the vast majority of Omar's reported wealth and represents a dramatic shift from her 2020 financial situation. The timing of Omar's marriage to Tim Minott appears significant in understanding her financial transformation. Minott, a political consultant, reportedly brought substantial business interests to the marriage. The disclosure that their wealth derives almost entirely from his ownership stake in two business interests. This suggests that the marriage itself may have been the primary vehicle for Omar's dramatic increase in net worth. The specific businesses responsible for this financial surge have been identified in financial reports and news analysis. The gains came from two primary business entities. 1. EST Crew LLC. This is a winery based in Santa Rosa, California. Tim Minott's ownership stake in this venture is a significant component of the couple's reported assets. The valuation of this business, along with its profits, contributed heavily to the net worth spike. 2. Rose Lake Capital. This is a venture capital firm, also owned by Tim Minott. The disclosure form listed up to $25 million in Rose Lake Capital LLC, which accounts for the vast majority of the upper limit of the reported $30 million net worth. The enormous valuation placed on Rose Lake Capital is the key to understanding how Omar's net worth reached such heights. These are not liquid assets like cash or stocks but rather ownership stakes in private companies. The valuation of such private firms can be complex and is based on self-reported figures in the disclosure forms, which are presented in broad ranges. The key for understanding this investment is to understand what businesses is Roselake Capital invested in. This raises important questions about the transparency of Omar's financial disclosures. While members of Congress are required to report assets and liabilities in broad ranges, the specific nature of business holdings and their sources of income often remain obscured from public view. Omar's financial practices have drawn scrutiny beyond just her personal wealth accumulation. In a significant development, the Minnesota Campaign Finance Board upheld a complaint filed by Representative Steve Drazkowski alleging that Omar had violated campaign finance laws. After a year's investigation, the board found that Omar had indeed broken the law, though the specific violations were not detailed in the search results provided. This finding is particularly relevant given Omar's rapid wealth accumulation, as it suggests a pattern of financial non-compliance that extends beyond her personal holdings to her campaign finances. The relationship between these campaign finance violations and her personal wealth growth remains unclear but warrants further investigation. Perhaps the most concerning aspect of Omar's financial trajectory is its potential connection to the massive Feeding Our Future fraud scheme in Minnesota and other fraud schemes involving the Somali community. The Feeding Our Future fraud case involved the misappropriation of federal COVID-19 relief funds intended for child nutrition programs, resulting in what has been described as one of the largest fraud cases in Minnesota history. While the search results clarify that Ilhan Omar has not been charged, indicted, or convicted in relation to the Feeding Our Future fraud or COVID relief funding as of August 2025, the connections between Omar and those involved in the scheme merit examination. The public DOJ statements cited in the fact-check list defendants and guilty pleas but do not assert criminal charges against Omar herself. However, the fact that Omar's name has been associated with discussions of this fraud scheme, even if not as a defendant, raises questions about her relationships with those involved. The scale of the Feeding Our Future fraud, involving hundreds of millions in federal funds, makes any potential connections to Omar's own rapid wealth accumulation particularly concerning. At present, we do not have specific details about Omar's connections to individuals convicted or accused of fraud beyond the general reference to the Feeding Our Future case. However, the pattern of Omar's wealth accumulation, occurring primarily through her husband's business interests, suggests that examining Minot's professional associations would be crucial to understanding the full picture. Political consulting firms like those reportedly owned by Minot often operate within networks of consultants, fundraisers, and political operatives. In cases like the Feeding Our Future fraud, such networks can sometimes facilitate connections between political figures and fraudulent enterprises, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Significant discrepancies exist in reported estimates of Omar's net worth. While her 2024 financial disclosure suggests a net worth between $6 million and $30 million. Other sources estimate her 2025 net worth at approximately $115,000. This enormous discrepancy, spanning 2 orders of magnitude, raises serious questions about the transparency and accuracy of financial reporting. Several factors might explain these discrepancies. 1. Different valuation methodologies for illiquid assets like business interests. 2. Timing differences between reports. 3. Different treatment of liabilities versus assets. 4. Potential errors or misinterpretations by reporting organizations. Regardless of the explanation, such dramatic inconsistencies in public reporting of a public official's wealth undermine transparency and public trust. Understanding Omar's reported wealth requires familiarity with the Congressional Financial Disclosure System. Members of the House of Representatives are required to file annual reports detailing their assets, liabilities, income, and transactions. These reports are made available to the public through the Clerk's Financial Disclosure Reports database. However, these disclosures have significant limitations. 1. Assets and liabilities are reported in broad ranges rather than specific values. 2. Certain types of assets may be exempt from disclosure. 3. Business income sources are often reported generically. 4. Valuations of illiquid assets like private business interests are self-reported. These limitations mean that while Omar's disclosures provide a framework for understanding her wealth growth, they may obscure the specific mechanisms and transactions involved. Several aspects of Omar's financial transformation raise red flags that merit further investigation. 1. Extraordinary velocity. The increase from approximately $65,000 to potentially $30 million in just a few years represents an unprecedented rate of wealth accumulation for a member of Congress. 2. Concentration in single business. The apparent concentration of wealth in Rose Lake Capital LLC and potentially one other business entity suggests a lack of diversification typical of such substantial wealth. 3. Timing relative to marriage. The close correlation between Omar's marriage to Minot and her wealth explosion suggests the need for closer examination of the origins of Minot's business interests. 4. Geographic proximity to major fraud. Omar's connection to Minnesota, where the massive Feeding Our Future fraud occurred, raises questions about potential overlaps in business or social networks. 5. Campaign finance violations. The documented campaign finance violations suggest a pattern of financial non-compliance that might extend to personal financial matters. Omar's reported wealth growth appears extraordinary even compared to other members of Congress who have experienced significant wealth increases while in office. While some members have seen their wealth grow through investments, book deals, or speaking fees, few if any have documented increases of this magnitude and velocity. The concentration of Omar's wealth in business interests rather than more typical sources like investments or royalties further distinguishes her case. This suggests that her wealth growth may stem from sources unrelated to her congressional service, which would be appropriate if fully transparent and legitimate. Omar's case highlights the significant role that spousal income and assets can play in congressional wealth profiles. Members of Congress are required to disclose their spouse's financial interests, but these often receive less public scrutiny than the member's own holdings. Certainly with the amount of fraud involvement of the Somali community and the rapid rise of Ilhan Omar's reported net worth, the investments in the two business interests of her husband warrants more investigation. We encourage both the Minnesota Attorney General and the United States Department of Justice to do a deeper dive into the investments of Ilhan Omar and her husband. I hope this video gives you a little more information on Ilhan Omar's rapid rise in net worth and will encourage others to dig deeper into how it happened. Thanks for watching and have a great day.
Are you looking for a limitless supply of insightful reads to expand your mind and transform your life? Look no further than Nehemiah Reset's ebook library, where knowledge meets inspiration at nehemiahreset.org/ebook. Go there today to discover a wealth of valuable resources to help you on your personal and professional journey to build a biblical worldview. Learn more about the Bible and how culture is impacting your worldview. Again, that the ebook library is located at nehemiahreset.org/ebook. Hope to see you soon. My name is Mark. I am one of the spokespersons for Nehemiah Reset. The prior video was sponsored by Nehemiah Reset, a 501c3. Our mission is to assist Christians in developing a biblical worldview as it pertains to relevant cultural and biblical issues. We seek to inform Christ's followers, equip them, and mobilize them into action to vote for their biblical values and to actively engage in our culture. We are also committed to help Christians and non-believers to develop a better biblical view. Nehemiah Reset produces videos and ebooks to assist members of the church in developing a biblical worldview when it comes to cultural issues. We produce videos on key topics like public school indoctrination, the woke agenda, sex education, equity and inclusion, climate change, immigration, religious freedom, and much, much more. To learn more about Nehemiah Reset or to watch our latest videos, go to our website at nehemiahreset.org or our rumble.com channel. We produce 2 to 3 videos every week. To get a weekly list of our latest videos, sign up for our weekly newsletter by going to nehemiahreset.org/email and subscribe. You can support our website by liking our videos, subscribing to our channels, or helping us reach more people through tax-exempt donations. Thanks for your help in growing God's kingdom and bringing more people to Christ. Thank you for your support and help. Come back again soon. Have a great day.